going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to finish up the welder. And what I need to do first is go by the hardware store. The original plug on it was cracked, so I need to get a new outlet plug, and I also need to get a little fitting so I can crimp 2 wires and reconnect that one that was broken off. Let's go over to the hardware store right now, and hopefully they have what we need. Back at the shop, and now I got a new plug, and I had to, all they had was these. They're like a little dual pin thing, so I will just have to recrimp 2 ends on the wires, and then we'll be okay. So let's do that. I also decided I'm just going to reuse the bolts. I would have had to order some M5 rivet nuts and bolts, and then that would have took time for them to come, and I want to get this thing back together today so I could use it. So we're going to put it all back together, use the old bolts. The welder is now all sorted out, put it back together, plugged it in, and struck an arc just to make sure that that fix was the actual issue. What I did was I just added this little gold splitter, and I connected the original wire, and then I just added a crimp connection right there, which will be fine. And then I rerouted a lot of the wires and zip tied them up so they're a little bit more clean. It was kind of a pain to put these together. There's just a lot of screws. I was going to use rivet nuts, and then I was getting into this point where I was wanting to just redo all the wiring, move this relay panel, move this and that, and I was like, no, just put it together. It's going to work. Don't mess with it. So now she's together, she works, and I don't have to buy a new welder. I don't have to take this to get it repaired. It was just some stupid issue, mouse or just time and age and like moving back and forth. It just broke that wire off, and that was the only issue. So that's fixed. The wire's a little bit cleaner. I also cleaned stuff up as I went, and I readjusted the contacts because this down here is actually supposed to be a certain there's actual spec that those are supposed to be at. So I put them to spec. I'm pretty sure they weren't, but when you undo all this stuff, they come loose. So that's good. All the wiring is now sorted, and once that cup and the regulator comes next week, we could do the FC exhaust. But yeah, I also ordered these little like D-rings, so I'm going to cut them in half and I'm going to use them on the FC exhaust. It's not what they're made for, but I think it'll come out really clean. So let's put these covers back on this thing, get the cooler on there. I'm also going to add a radiator to the cooler, because I think there was one on it at one time before I got the welder, and then I've just always had that hose just going back into the reservoir. So I'll probably do that before I make the FC exhaust, and after that's done, I think this welder will be good for many projects to come. So a little change of pace from the usual routine. I have been doing quite a bit of SolidWorks. I really didn't time lapse anything just because I was doing prints and drawings and getting everything made for the FD turbo manifold JIG. So I have a steel base, and then I have a copper piece that the flange actually bolts to, because copper actually dissipates heat when you TIG weld flanges. I also made a little thing for the tile flanges, so you pretty much use the V-band, you clamp them together, it's copper, and the good thing about that is when it's clamped and it's on the copper sucks all the heat out of the face, which reduces the chances of the flange actually warping. So that is pretty much what I'm trying to eliminate, is the possibility of the flange face warping. So the less it warps, the better. It's always gonna warp a little bit, but the copper faces against the flange should reduce that drastically, and especially since they're going to be bolted, it's going to, you know, reduce it that much more. So other than just being a flange to dissipate heat. This is the base. So this is for the actual flange that bolts to the engine. And no, this is for the flange that actually bolts to the engine, but this is the base. So this is made of 4130 steel. And then it's pretty simple. It has, it has through holes, and then there's threaded holes. So the other flange can bolt to this flange. The copper flange can bolt to this flange, but let's see if we can find something that's a little bit more interesting. So this is the actual copper flange right here that the normal flange is going to bolt to. So this is where it bolts to that other 4130 steel flange, and the stainless steel flange bolts in these holes right here. But I wanted the ability to back purge the turbo manifold while I weld it. So these holes right here, this is a 1/4 in, and this is just a little hole to let argon in to back purge that section of the manifold that I'm going to be welding. I have one on each side, you can see. So that makes it so I could actually back purge it. And this is pretty much how you do prints. You just call out the holes. Each one shows what the hole is, and that's what the flange is going to look like. It's going to be made out of copper, and then that's the 1/4 in. So that 1/4 in just goes to that hole right there. There's one on each side because the flanges are separate. It's going to have 2 wastegates, so it's going to be a true divided manifold. It's not going to have one singular wastegate. It's going to have 2 38 mils instead of one large 60. So that makes it a lot nicer to weld, especially because the 4130 steel flange that the copper flange bolts to actually is going to be part of the jig. So I'm going to weld those 4130 steel flanges. I'm going to weld those and make a permanent jig fixture. So if I ever want to recreate the manifold, I can. If people are actually interested in them, I can make duplicates of it. So other than this one, I made pretty much the same thing for each one. It took a few hours to do. I'm pretty good at SolidWorks. Let's see if I can find another one. So this is another base, and that's just another steel base. So you can see in this one there's the little holes for the argon to escape. But what I did was, because this is a 2-part for the tile flange, it actually has one singular bolt. I'm going to have 2 of these because there's 2 on each. There's 2 tile wastegates, so there's going to be 2 in the jig. But I made the holes so they're evenly spaced. So if I want to close that section off for the argon, I could just turn it and then rebolt it, and it will seal that section shut. And let's see if I can find the actual one. Oh, this is the little fixture I made. This is going to be out of copper, and it's made because the in of the 38 mil wastegate is it has the firing in it, and then the dump tube is different. So I made one little fixture so I could clamp it to either one of those flanges, and then I could weld it without being, in a jig. If I just want to make like a dump tube or just want to do one-off something. And then it also has the 1/4 in as well on both sides, so I could back purge that section of pipe. I could just put some aluminum foil on one side or the other, and that makes it really nice. So that is another little thing that I actually made or designed so I could have it made so I could get this manifold all buttoned up and welded together. That's one of the other issues that I've been trying to resolve so I could get the FD back up and running. I've been wanting to design all this stuff for it, but I really haven't allocated the time to do it, and I had a little bit of free time after fixing the welder, so I decided that I'd do SolidWorks. It always seems like once you start, it just consumes your whole day. You go upstairs and it's like 9 o'clock at night, but yeah, look at that, it's already 8:25 at night, and you know, there were a few fixtures. It went pretty quick. I have been messing with a few other things. You just get down here and lose track of time because I am in the basement, and I just have like the playlist playing on my computer. It has like, I don't know, I think it's like 75 gigs of music or something crazy. So it just goes through and never stops, and then you lose track of time. So I'm glad that this stuff is ready to go, ready to send off to the machine shop. Once this stuff goes to the machine shop, it should be a few weeks until I get it back. I'm gonna have, like I said, 2 wastegates on that manifold, so I'll order 2 of each of those, and then I'll order 1 of each of the other flanges, and get this jig all made, get the manifolds, you know, it's already where I want it to be, so I just need to make the jig, back purge the manifold, and then I can actually weld it together. And then the FD, all it will need is the exhaust, because I have the turbo. I'll have to make some kind of intake, and I might have to do something with the radiator. I'm not sure if I want to use the old radiator or what, but I guess we'll see once that time comes. And I might want to do something a little different with the radiators, but I am glad that this is done. And you know, it's just one of those things. I don't have enough time to do all this stuff. I guess I could show you some other stuff that I'm designing for the 240Z, but that's way out. That's why I haven't even pulled that project into the shop, because we have just a whole bunch of stuff. Here, let's show you guys. So we'll go to SolidWorks. We'll go to 240Z, and I don't even know if I don't know what's gonna happen here, if it's gonna like it or not. Don't rebuild. I don't want you to rebuild right now. Don't do it. Okay, at least it was all right. So I'm gonna let you guys know, if you are new to the channel and don't know anything about the SolidWorks stuff that I do a lot in SolidWorks, and I'm actually extremely good at it. I went to college. I was actually extremely proficient in it. I went to the class I took SolidWorks. Actually, I started with CAD. I went all the way up in 3D CAD, AutoCAD, and then I went to SolidWorks in college, and I literally went to the class for like a week, and the teacher was like, no, you're too good at this, you don't need to come back anymore. And then throughout school, I was actually, you know, doing all kinds of stuff with SolidWorks. I just continued doing it, got better and better. You know, my computer isn't fast enough to do like crazy assemblies, but this is probably the largest assembly I can do on my computer. It doesn't even like to do flows, it actually freezes up. I used to do fluid flows, but yeah, it just freezes, so it's not even worth doing. But this is some stuff I'm designing for the 240Z, and this is just all suspension stuff, so I need to actually 3D print the subframe. After I need to figure out what steering rack I'm going to put on here so I could add the mounting points for it, but this is a fully billet subframe on the bottom, and it pretty much has upper and lower control arms, so it gets rid of all of that stuff down here, because you used to, so I have this little adapter, because I adjust all this stuff through the upper and lower control arms, so it's actually quite a bit of designing that I've already done. And then the coilover, I have like the top hat designed and stuff. Most likely, I designed it to use a BC coil. This we'll just bolt a BC coil into it. I need to figure out what spring rates I want, but yeah, this is all kinds of designing that I've done. Some of the knuckle is missing, but the knuckle is actually, I made it to use a 370Z hub. So the hubs just bolt in, and the rear is the same. It uses 370Z rear hubs, so I could use the diff and everything. But yeah, this thing is going to be, it's just one of those things. I've pretty much allocated the time to do some of it, and then I've been doing so much other stuff I haven't been able to finish the design process so I could actually get the 240Z on the ground on my suspension and everything. So I also am using the I have it designed to use the Willowwood 6-piston front calipers, 4-piston rear calipers. So it's just, there's still some designing to do, but it is getting closer. The RB, once I get that subframe, it should just bolt right in, because I have that subframe and then mounts to bolt the RB30 into that subframe. And that subframe is actually the same as the factory 240Z one. It's just billet aluminum. And I don't know if billet aluminum is going to be too heavy, but I may end up just doing like a tube subframe, and it just kind of depends on what I decide and how heavy the aluminum becomes and how expensive the aluminum is going to be. But that's pretty much it for this video. I'm glad that the welder is going to work. All the stuff for the welder should be here on Tuesday. I looked at the tracking number, so the FC exhaust will be probably getting done mid next week, and I think we'll just go from there. And the Hellcat stuff should be here. I'm guessing it'll be here Monday as well. So or Monday, and then Tuesday will be the FC stuff. But yeah, this is the 240Z kind of gets me excited. I really just need to sit down for like a couple weeks, but it's just hard to do making videos because people would be so disinterested in me just doing CAD videos, especially how tedious it is. So that's coming. I just need to do one video a week in CAD, just so I can get the 240Z stuff buttoned up and ready to go and designed and sent off to the machine shop and get parts back so I can test them out. But yeah, I think that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys liked the video, subscribe, comment below, thumbs up, and see you guys tomorrow.